Thank you, delegates and panelists. My name is Megha Iyer, Associate Editor of EPR Magazine. My colleague, Ms. Anushka Jha from the Editorial Department of EPR Magazine are here to introduce the panelists and to moderate the session. I welcome Ms. Anushka.
Thank you, Megha. Smart energy refers to the intelligent operation of the entire power system, right from the generation, transmission and distribution, to further ensure optimal performance. Several control and monitoring technologies, along with the automation system, helps us to run and maintain a power system with optimal function. Moreover, with the increasing demand for efficient power transmission and distribution, the Indian grid is being taxed to its capacity. As a result, the need to have smart meters and smart power systems to monitor and manage the complexities of energy infrastructure. On this note, EPR Magazine is having the live power talk on smart electricity in it, a strategy review to briefly review the present situation and coming opportunities to have smart and reliable electricity in it. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to introduce you all to our today's distinguished speaker, Mr. Sabyasachi Manjumta, who is the Senior Vice President and Head Group Corporate Sector Rating at ICRA Limited. Mr. Ripunjay Parekh, who is the Director at Eton Electrical Sector in. Mr. Sanjeev Banerjee, who is the Founder and Chairman at Manav Group of Companies. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Megha Iyer for the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Anushka. Mr. Sabyasachi, Mr. Majumdar, I would like to start with you. You said that we aim to reduce AT&C losses to 15% pan-India level.
Right.
What's the present status of AT&C losses nationally? And according to you, how will this get accomplished?
So basically, right now, the nameplate AT&C losses are somewhere around 20%. But again, it varies widely across states. For example, of course, in urban areas, naturally, it's in the sub 10. But even in states like Gujarat and all, where there's a large amount of rural supply as well, we have seen their ability to bring down their overall AT&C losses across the discoms to a little over 10% maybe. But then again, you have states like Bihar, you have states like UP and others where the AT&C losses are very high. More importantly, we must remember that since 100% metering has not been done at all levels, right from, let's say, the energy meter at the consumer end to the distribution transformer metering to 33 kV everyone is metered, but distribution transformer metering as well as metering at the individual level is not complete. So whatever numbers which are being thrown up for AT&C levels, we must take them with a pinch of salt, because very often what happens is that theft is often clubbed under agriculture. They will say that 100 units have been sold to the agriculture consumer, but actually out of the 100 units which has been fed into the grid, only 50 to 60 units may have gone into the pump sets and the rest might have been pilfered. So whatever AT&C losses we have, we must take it with a pinch of salt. That is also something we need to remember. So what needs to be done is to basically have metering at all levels. We have done it at 33, the feeder level has been done, distribution level to a great extent has been done. But now we need to do the metering, electronic metering at the consumer, at the end level also. And it must be smart metering so that, people cannot, tamper with the meters and things like that. So so that is the most important part. But apart from the issue of technical issues that you have to put up meters and you have to read them, it's also a managerial challenge because, there's a lot of malpractices at the distribution level. And very often, not only the consumers, but sometimes even the employees are, hand in glove with such practice. The most important thing is the managerial challenge, the state executive, whether it's the government, whether the chief minister, right down from the chief minister to the employees of the electricity discoms. They have to be very clear that every unit of power which has been injected into the grid has to be built, and whatever has been built has to be collected. And for that, timely billing is also important. Very often, for example, we find, particularly in the rural areas, that billing and collection is carrying out only in 6 months. So poor villager who is willing to pay a 500 rupees monthly bill is unwilling to pay a 3,000 rupee lump sum at the end of the 6 months. So two things. One is we have to ensure that all billings, infrastructure is meters are put into place, billing and collection is done. And finally, there is a managerial willingness to bill and collect these units. So that is, as I see the clear, that what needs to be done. What needs to be done is very simple, very achievable, provided the intent is there on the part of the government. That is what I see the biggest challenge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sabyasachi, for sharing your analysis with us. Mr. Pari, talking about the intelligent solutions for power distribution. Today, various solutions are available from different corporates. So, is there any standardization in software available to manage the power infrastructure?
While we talk of, let's say, the softwares may not have a standardization because naturally every individual has its own protocols. But the communication, so a software works on, let's say, an input data. And then the software analyzes and gives an output. The softwares can today are harmonized to, let's say, take input from, let's say, any source of protocol, whether it's, let's say, a Modbus protocol, whether it's a Profibus protocol or Ethernet protocol. And the devices, when I talked of, those smart devices, primarily are able to communicate over those protocols, communication, to any of the software. So today it's practically a vendor-neutral software which can integrate devices from any of the suppliers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ripunja, for sharing your views. Mr. Sanjeev, I'm sure you would like to add something to it. I can see that. Please.
No, I fully agree with Ripunja. Today, the IP belongs to the understanding of the physics, and softwares are made because based on those IPs. I agree that the content of the software is very IP oriented, but the talking to each other has a defined protocol, and those protocols are used. Ripunja is quite right in understanding.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjeev, for your brief explanation on it. Mr. Sabyasachi, you also spoke about power finances and the energy outlook. My question to you is how massive inclusion of modernization in the electrical infrastructure, especially urban electrical infrastructure, is improving the power quality at the distribution level?
So, if you see at the urban level, the quality of supply has really improved. We are, we see much lesser number of outages and other things. Yes, there are certain issues. For example, there are schedule load shedding, which has more to do with the overall state of DISCOM finances. Those are different issues, but by and large, we are seeing in terms of the overall measured in terms of the standard measures across urban areas, at least in the better run states, they are very good now. Fair amount of investment is done, and more importantly, the DISCOMs themselves realize that in the urban areas, the customer mix is very favorable, and ensuring high uptime and high collection ensures better revenues. So it is in the interest of the DISCOMs themselves to ensure high uptime and amount of supplies in the urban areas.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjeev, for your brief overview on this part. Mr. Sanjeev, what are your views on it in terms of obtaining and ensuring reliability and power stability?
So I will take on the question from the previous question Mr. Sabyasachi answered. What the DISCOM and these people can provide is the voltage, is the force, but the running of the mechanism, the current is consumed by the load. So the character of the load is also extremely important, and current harmonics are load driven. So the power quality can be changed by the load. So we are having enough mechanisms in place by penalizing by many things, where the load centers have the responsibility to deter them from using power quality which can detriment of the source. So when we look at safety and reliability, we look at it wholesome. So the power quality is looked at both domains, the source side as well as the load side. Due to power quality deterioration, aging happens in an electrical system. So an electrical system which is supposed to work for 30-35 years, why do you rewind a motor in 10 years? It was supposed to work for 40 years. So the design lifetime is changed when the power quality deterioration happens. So it is possible to now monitor all these power qualities and put within the smart metering the power quality monitoring systems. It exists, smart meter exists today, which can not only meter but also monitor various power qualities. And then including collection, penalization can be done on a global scenario. So this is where we have reached. Thank you.
So I'll just add to it, and just before the session, I was discussing on the large public sector unit. So there's a solution called partial discharge monitoring, and this is especially for your medium voltage systems, where if let's say there's a failure of a motor, the cost of outage or let's say rewinding is too high. So a very efficient solution called a partial discharge monitoring system, which can give you continuous health of your insulation system. And it can give you alerts in the event there's a major deviation, and you can actually predict how long is going to work or when it's going to fail, and you can plan your preventive maintenance. And thereby this is going to be I would say a must demand. Every consumer who has a large medium voltage equipment should actually look forward to that. And Eaton has a wonderful solution. We can provide trainings also to the customer for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjeev and Mr. Ripunjay, for adding your views and explaining it to us very well. Mr. Parikh, my question to you is, how is the recent geopolitical situation challenging the supply chain at your business?
I would say, it has really been a shock, a rude shock to, let's say, the customers, because today every customer was under, sort of a habit that, when he orders something, the equipments are either available ex stock or over a period of a couple of weeks. The global geopolitical system, I would say, has disrupted on three fronts. One is the logistics part. Dependence on the global logistics is putting time as well as, let's say, the cost pressures. This really, if I look back as the vision of, let's say, our Prime Minister about Make in India, I would say India really made a good progress, and that's where, to a large extent, we got insulated from, let's say, the global outage, because we built those manufacturing capacities in India. The second thing is in terms of, I would say, we have multinational companies who depends on their supply chain, and they have a very well coordinated material. So if, let's say, one of the supplier fails, today it creates a bigger burden on the system. And lastly, I would say in terms of the systems, today, let's say companies like Eaton who are exporting back and we are importing, I would say the system is very well planned by the government, by which, let's say, people who are going to export are benefited. Only thing is we need to really look at the global dynamics, when to plan your shipments, and I believe it's another 6 months till the time things may come back to normal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parikh. Of course, we need to look at the global dynamics, as you said, to plan shipments and all our products for exports and imports. Thank you, sir. Mr. Banerjee, coming to you, looking at the growing power demand and scaling up power usage like EVs, do we need to review the safety guidelines available today for both industrial and for domestic space?
I have been interacting with safety guidelines, and our understanding of contingency and safety today in India is not much. We are more operational, so we tend to operate things. But when it comes to contingency and safety, we are wanting. It needs to improve. There are lots of improvements which has been done, like the ELCBs have come into picture. There are various other protection systems which has come into picture. But we have hardly looked at electromagnetics. So when we are looking at electromagnetics and you are sitting under a particular table lamp and reading, do you know that it can cause your memory loss? Do you know that there are certain frequencies which are carcinogenic? There are many issues of radiative and conductive things which exist, which are very, very critical. In Europe, there's a clear human electromagnetic susceptibility standard in Germany. Now we don't have that, so the kind of equipment which we make in India gets passed because we don't have those rules. But we can. There is a huge domain of safety requirement can be enhanced, and most important is today power is being metered, but today the solar or renewable things which we are putting on our roof can give you 180 watt per meter square, and the Scotchy Quasar barrier cannot allow this generation up to 33.7%. This is the maximum efficiency possible. But there are technologies which has been developed already that the household may not need an electrical meter. So can we approach that dimension where a household doesn't need an electrical meter? That means the load center is sufficient enough. And for that, we need to reach certain kinds of coherent generations. And Manav as a company is going to present such hybrid generations on July 17th to the world. Patent is applied. So you will be able to produce much more power than SQ barrier, which limits, because solar gives us 1000 watt per meter square. And out of that, we are able to harness only 180 watt per meter square. But there are dimensions and where the safety requirements will change. So world is changing and hope for the good.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, the world is changing, and like you highlighted the relevant and critical issues and the dimensions for electricity for all, like the government is also planning. We are sure that even the industries and the government is making all possible efforts to address the safety issues and the standard issues also. Mr. Majumdar, coming to you, one of the hurdles in modernizing the power infrastructure is self-reliance. What is your outlook in we becoming self-manageable?
I didn't. So, in terms of, we need to break it up into various components, right? We need to break it up into transmission, we need to break it into generation, and we need to break it into distribution. So, obviously, in the case of distribution and transmission, we are largely self-reliant. Most of our equipment is manufactured in-house. We have EPC contractors who can implement that. Obviously, there are certain critical components in the T&D chain, including semiconductors and others which will come up from abroad. And that is fine. We can't really expect every economy to manufacture everything in-house. But I think by and large, the implementation, most of the technology, substantial part of the software, everything is available domestically. Now, when we come to, generation equipment, obviously we have thermal, we have hydro, and we have renewable energy. And again, in renewable energy, we have two main forms, solar and wind. I'll come to wind last. In terms of hydro, we are by and large almost 100% self-reliant. There might be some small component which come from the global supply chain, but by and large, the expertise as well as equipment manufactured in-house. Although, of course, some of that equipment manufacture happens by multinationals like Coir, Siemens and others, which is fine because now they have manufacturing facilities here. Yes. In thermal also, there was a huge challenge we faced from Chinese manufacturers. But one, of course, the overall capacity pace has slowed down. But now a lot of, capacities are available, enough capacities are available locally. And by and large, to a great extent, thermal manufacture is also in-house. Wind also, again, dominated mainly by multinationals now, but most of them again have facilities in India with some critical components coming from the global chain. It's in the solar area where I think we are still very substantially dependent upon the international, in particular the module side. Of course, there's a small amount of module which is coming from India. Now, the thing is, we might be able to get into module manufacturing on a large scale, maybe able to persuade international manufacturers also. But then it will still, with the, if you go backward, there's the wafer, there's a polysilicon. So, and particularly when it comes down right up to the polysilicon, I mean, right now we are doing about 10 gigawatts reliably every year. So with a 10 gigawatt kind of market, no one, even if we have the, policies in place, even if we are able to provide the land, reasonably cheap power, unless, there's a visibility of 20 gigawatt plus kind of capacity addition locally, we will not really get down to polysilicon. So to some extent, to a great extent, in fact, it will take some time before, we become truly Atmanirbhar in terms of production. So that is broadly as I see. But again, we have large, domestic players who have stated intention of getting into backward integration into solar, into battery technology, green hydrogen, everything. I think things are being planned. But it will be some time, before those plans come. But
Absolutely.
We are moving in the right direction.
Absolutely, sir. You mentioned about the RE penetration also.
Right.
And onto that note, Mr. Parekh, my question to you is talking about the future power business. Renewable energy is critical. What is your analysis on India's renewable energy growth? Are you optimistic about our RE future?
We look at the the need for deploying more renewable energy, I think so the government is very, very committed. Today, I think so less than 20% of our power is from renewable, but that the government has a vision that, maybe by 2030, we should be reaching to more than 40 to 50% of our energy coming from renewable. Having said that, the biggest advantage of investing in renewable and the first topic which Mr. Sabyasachi talked about, let's say the transmission and distribution losses. Rather than generating in one location, distributing it transmitting it over the country, you create local generation and local consumptions, local grid. That's where the renewable comes in very handy. Whether you talk of, let's say, the Ladakh and the other northeast region where you can create really local power sources. Today, I would say, the major industrial houses are already investing in creating silicon, primarily, which is the need for a solar power. They are investing in creating, let's say, the lithium ion, which is primarily critical for storage of the power. And a lot of development is happening in India to look at the fuel cell, which is going to be, let's say, a future alternative to the solar. But yes, India is committed to really, grow in the solar field. The beauty of India is we have beautiful sunshine throughout the year. We'll be bearing the monsoons, and we have people who are willing to embrace technology. We have a government who is actually, really doing a lot of policy decisions to promote, integration of the solar. And today, solar is the cheapest cost of power generation. So I would say it's a wonderful progress there. And the future in the next 5 years, every house or every housing societies at least will have a solar. That is my vision and aspiration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ripunjat, for your analysis and about the RE future in India. Now we are almost at the end of this session. Can I request Mr. Sabyasachi Mazumdar to give a closing statement for this session?
So clearly, we are in very interesting times. Obviously, the power sector is facing a lot of challenges, but we see our, power sector on a line of self-sufficiency. The demand outlook remains favorable. We are moving towards a greater sustainability with increasing amount of renewable energy being pumped into the system. There remain, of course, areas of concern, particularly in the DISCOM finances side. But overall, I think given the state where we are in economy, I think, power sector will have a great time ahead. And hopefully our various initiatives which are there towards manufacturing self-sufficiency, that will also come to fruition over the coming years.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mazumdar, for sharing your optimistic views regarding the future of India, and all the panelists who, amidst all their views, mixed views, they still are optimistic about India's future in terms of reliable power, electricity, and stability and safety also. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable views. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Anushka to go ahead with the closing statement for the session.
Thank you, Megha. So thank you all the panelists for sharing your valuable thoughts on smart electricity in India, a strategy. We hope you all have enjoyed this session. But before wrapping up the session, I would like to specially thank our panelists, Mr. Sabyasachi Mazumdar, Mr. Sanjeev Banerjee, and Mr. Ripunjat Pai. I would also like to thank our Associate Editor, Ms. Megha Iyer, for taking this initiative. To get more updates about EPR Magazine, you could follow our social media pages, and also you can download our application, which is available on Google Play App Store for enhanced reading. With this, I would like to announce the closing of today's session. I request you all to stay tuned for more such sessions. Until then, thank you. Goodbye.